shows in 2021. He is represented by Birch Contemporary in Toronto. Deary was a recent recipient of grants from Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, and Canada Council for the Arts. So thank you, Jason, for being our artist today. Now, before we begin sketching, I want to quickly break down some of the science behind our plant of interest and discuss why plants need light in order to survive. Let's begin by imagining you're outside, but the temperature is beginning to rise. All you have to do is step inside or into the shade to cool off. Unfortunately, plants can't move themselves so easily to get away from the heat and light of the sun. So instead, there are plants that have evolved and adapted to either utilize this form of energy or to protect themselves from it. Today, we're discussing and sketching heliophytes, plants that thrive in areas with intense light and rely on the heat of the sun to live. These are also known as sunstroke plants. Plants such as lavender, black-eyed Susans, fireweed, and our plant of interest today, the sunflower. The sunflower is believed to have originated in Mexico, but can presently be found in many countries around the world due to its use for food and ornamental value. The name sunflower is most likely derived from the flower's unique head shape, which resembles the sun. Typically reaching 3 meters high, this annual flower relies on full sun exposure in order to grow best. It's often wondered if flowering sunflower heads track the sun across the sky. This is partially true. Immature flower buds exhibit this behavior. The mature flowering heads, though, point in a fixed and typically easterly direction throughout the day. This is known as a heliotropic motion, or following of the sun, and is most notably known as the flower's circadian rhythm. Sort of like how our circadian rhythm tells us when to be awake and when to be asleep. When growth of the flower stalk stops and the flower is mature, the heliotropic motion also stops, and the flower faces east for the rest of its life. So you may be wondering, why is light so important to plants? Well, they use light either from the sun or artificial sources like lamps in a process called photosynthesis to make a type of sugar known as glucose. And this sugar provides them with energy, kind of like how food gives us energy. The glucose is made in the chloroplast of leaf cells, which contains a green pigment called chlorophyll. And this allows the plant to absorb light energy. If a plant does not have enough light, it may grow very slowly. Now, not all plants, however, need a lot of sun exposure to survive. Psiophyte plants are the opposite of heliophytes. They need less light and typically grow under the canopy of trees. An example of a psiophyte is mint. Now, I hope you're all as excited as I am to begin sketching. So I'm going to hand over the reins to Jason to learn more and begin our artwork.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who I am, my approach to drawing, things that I think are really important to remember when drawing and making art, and then we'll get into the specifics of how to draw this particular subject. So I'm going to give you a brief kind of overall idea about the things that I like to talk about in my classes, and these ideas about drawing and general tips will help you not only in drawing the sunflower, but drawing any other subject matter. So whether we're drawing a sunflower, a tree, a pet, someone in our family, or something we made up, some main rules in our minds. Now, the biggest tip for me would be to have fun. Each and every drawing we make isn't going to be perfect, but each time we draw and each time we try, we're going to get just a little bit better. So I don't want you to worry about good and bad and right and wrong. I want you to stay loose and I want you to have fun through this exercise. Some drawings are meant to be framed and hung in a gallery, and some are meant to be in our sketchbooks just for no one to ever see them. And all those drawings are just fine, and there's no right or wrong. I also want you to keep in mind that you can draw with anything. The thing about drawing is it's really easy, it's really accessible. You don't need any fancy stuff. It's not oil paint, it's not sculpture, it's not clay. Some of you may have a little drawing kit that you have with your sketchbook and with your pencils or your pastels or your charcoal, whatever. And some of you might just have a ballpoint pen in the junk drawer and some old computer paper. Both of that's fine, and we can follow along with whatever we have. If it is possible, I do recommend having a sketchbook. If you don't have one today, that's okay. But going forward, if you want to keep practicing drawing, it's great to have one of those. Some of you budding scientists might even have a field book or a notebook where you keep ideas and thoughts, and the sketchbook's very similar. Don't think of your sketchbook as a place where each page needs to have a perfect and finished artwork. It's notes, it's rough ideas, it's quick snapshots, all those things. It's your own personal visual journal. I keep a sketchbook on me that's small enough to fit in my backpack and even my winter coat. And if I'm on the bus or I'm watching Netflix or if I'm having my coffee in the morning, sometimes I like to draw and just scribble just to move my pencil around. I really want you to think about the practice of drawing as becoming a regular routine versus this sort of special occasion art making thing. One of the things to keep in mind with drawing from real life is why we even do it. You know, I think if we wanted to just know what this sunflower looks like, say I wanted to tell my friend who's not here what a sunflower looks like. You know, science may bring that back, share that with. That's not quite the case with what we're doing here now. So what does it mean to draw something? Why are we drawing something? Why is that special? I think drawing something from life is about spending time with something. It's about studying it. It's about learning about it. And it's also about reimagining or re-envisioning it or presenting it through the way you see it to other people. And because it's about our unique perception and it's about our interpretation, I'm not going to teach this so that we all have the same end product. I don't really, you know, I think it's a little kind of boring if we all draw the exact same thing. So some of you might like kind of cartoon drawings. Some of you might like abstract drawings. Some of you may want to be super realistic. Some of you may want to be really messy. Some of you may want to be neat. There's room for all of that in this. I really want the drawing to be of a sunflower, but also be a personal reflection of you and the way that you see things. Another thing about drawing is that it is a foundation for all other types of art. So if you want a painter, you're often going to sketch out your ideas ahead of time with pencil. If you want to work in movies, you might draw storyboards. If you want to make sculptures, you're going to make drawing plans. All sort of creative elements start with drawing. It's a way of making notes. It's a way of jotting down ideas. And if you know how to draw things from life, it's so much easier to reinterpret and reimagine or then draw from memory. Speaking of memory, we don't want to draw this particular object from memory. We want it to really draw it from real life. So as we're going and as we're drawing, I want you to look at your subject as much as possible. Some of you may have flowers with you today, and some of you might be working from a photo, and some of you might be working from mine. Whatever you're using as your reference point, I would like you to try to look at your subject as much as you can, and you want to be looking at your subject more than you're actually looking at your page. If we're drawing with our head down at our page and not looking at our subject, you know, for seconds at a time, we actually start drawing from memory, and our memory of the object might actually be a little bit different than what's in front of us. And because we really want to study this, we really want to look. Sometimes that sounds a little bit scary. You know, the idea of like, well, I have to look at my page, I have to look at my drawing, I have to look at my hand. But if we think back to when we all started learning to type on a computer or our phones or play video games, we probably first started looking at our hands, and the better we got, the better we could just focus in on our subject. One of the other things that I always like to say, I think it's really important when we're drawing that we stay loose. So when we're doing drawings, even smaller ones, we want our action to be coming from our elbow and our shoulder. That gives our drawing a little more life, a little more energy. It helps things stay a little bit looser. When we draw from our hand, things get really kind of tight and really sketchy. We don't want short little lines until we get to our details. We want to start really kind of loose and swirly and big. And you can kind of see, as I just scribble about here, that it's really about the whole arm. I sometimes say it's almost like motion as if you're conducting, right? These kind of wild conducting actions. And staying loose too, hold your pencil a little bit looser. Don't get too stiff, don't get too tight. The action and energy that you put into your lines and into your drawings will come through in the final product. You don't want it to look too stiff or too lifeless. I know this plant is just sitting here, but you know, it is slowly growing. It is reaching up to the sun. It is taking in water. It might be swaying in the breeze, swaying in the wind. So think about, you know, those little bit of action, the little bit of way that we can give it life. The other thing that we can put into drawings is mood and energy, right? Like if I draw a line, there's a difference between a nice soft and smooth line or a really kind of harsh line. So what does it mean to draw a flower that's angry, a flower that's happy, a flower that's sad, a flower that's quiet, a flower that's loud? I want you to think about those things as we go through. I'm not sure if any of you folks play sports or have gym class or any activities like that. Just give me one sec here, my apologies. But when we're practicing a sport, or playing a sport rather, we're not just gonna jump in. We're not just gonna go play the big game. We're gonna practice, we're gonna warm up, right? We're gonna practice our shots. We're gonna stretch, we're gonna get our muscles loose. We're gonna make sure we get our reps in, that we know what we're doing. Oh my gosh. I was worried about technical difficulties, but I'm sorry. I am having paperclip difficulties. Okay. I just saw something pop up there where someone was listing some kind of sports that they played. And I saw soccer pop up, which is great. So if we're thinking about, you know, playing soccer, we're not just going to jump in and play that big championship game, right? We're going to stretch, we're going to loosen up. We might practice our passing. We're going to practice our shooting, and drawing is just like sports, where the more we practice, the better we get. So in order to kind of get us all stretched and loosened up and get some practice in, I want to just do some practice drawing exercises. We're going to keep it super simple, and we're just going to draw some lines. So I was talking about different emotions we can get through lines, right? So I want everyone to practice along. What is it like if you draw a quiet line? Okay. So I went nice and soft and smooth there, very faint, might even be hard to see because it's so quiet. And what about a loud line? Well, that loud line's going up and down, right? Making a lot of noise, it's bolder, it's bigger. What do we draw an angry line? What does anyone know what an angry line might look like? You can probably imagine that. Maybe it's more jagged, maybe it's more harsh. It's a little bit jerky. Happy line has a little bounce to it. So I just want you to kind of think about how the way that you put your pencil down, the marks you make, whether they're smooth and flowing or jagged and harsh, or bold and heavy or light and soft, how those different things are going to be interpreted. Line weight is also another one we're going to think about, right? A light line versus a thick and heavy line are going to give us different feelings. So let's all take a couple minutes to just, not a couple minutes, a couple seconds, just practice moving your pencil around. And again, don't be afraid to make a mess. Don't be afraid to do something wrong. Just, scribble, make fun. I just saw someone say they like to do piano warm-ups. I am jealous because I cannot play an instrument at all. I've always been able to draw, but music is not my forte whatsoever. So I like to just kind of move my pencil around, practicing scribbling. I know that we can all scribble, we can all doodle. Sometimes I think when we go to make a drawing, we get so worried about doing the wrong thing that we slow down and we don't make that mark right away. One of the other things I'm going to say is I'm not going to use an eraser this whole time. If I make a mistake, I'm just going to go right on top of it. And I'd like you to do the same as well. We're also going to be drawing fast today. Now, speed is going to come with practice. So I don't expect you to draw as fast as me, but I don't want you to get so worried about what you're going to draw that you get frozen. I want you to just go for it and have fun. So we've done some practice lines. Now we're going to talk about our subject just a little bit more. We've got our hand flowing. We're going to keep kind of flowing and do some practicing, but we're going to do it in relation to our subject. So when we do life drawing, and whether that's a still life, our animal, a person, whatever, we want to start with gesture drawing. And in art, a gesture drawing is a very quick representation of something. It kind of gets your main ideas, your shapes. Not perfect drawing. It is not contained detail. It is a snapshot, so to speak. It's the main form, the basic idea. So when we do gestures, and because we're getting the main idea on the basic shapes, it's always good to break your subject down to what are those basic shapes. So I'm going to grab our sun here. And if we think about what the basic shapes are here, I think it's pretty simple. We've got a circle here, right? I think we can probably all draw a circle. Kind of a smaller circle in here too, as we see the colors kind of shift and change. All the petals here, I'd say they're, ovals with maybe little triangle tips, almost the shape of a spade. The leaves are probably the most complicated. But again, if we kind of think of them as being a similar shape to the petals, that have oval with a triangle on the end, and then just a little bit more shape on the outside, it's actually not that hard. And then we just have this long stem. So when doing gesture drawings, I like to start with very, very simple shapes to lay things out. Now, the simplest drawings we've probably all done before is the stick figure, right? Stick figures are very easy. We do them as kids, and then we kind of learn to draw a little bit better. Maybe we change things, but I still use stick figures to help me lay things out. Even if I was drawing a person, I start with a stick figure. So stick figure for the flower, right? We got a line, that's our stem. We got that circle on top. See how much it looks like a stick figure of a person? And then I'm gonna just kind of roughly do these ovally shapes for my petals. And then I'm gonna do that smaller circle on the inside. Now see, that was just a few seconds in, and it's very rough and it's very loose, but I have a layout and I have a quick sketch and I have my gesture. The better you get at this, the more you practice, the better and more accurate these gestures are gonna be, right? You're gonna start changing the size of things. You'll get your proportions and your positions down a little bit better. But this is kind of the basic idea, right? Just these really kind of quick gestures. So again, that's a long stem, a big circle on top. I'm using these ovals to kind of build out the petals around it. drawing really light and really loose, I'm going to tighten this up and bolden it up and make it dark. Right? Very simple kind of sunflower shapes. So if you're not already, I want everyone to kind of start drawing along, and I want us to do a few of these together. I want everyone to get a few practice drawings in, very, very quick, very, very rough, very loose gesture drawings, just to get a feel. So do another one for you here. I hope everyone's following along. I can't see you, so I'm gonna trust that you are. So nice big long line for our stem. Do a nice big round circle on the top. Smaller circle on the inside as that color changes. And then we're gonna just loop around our kind of ovally shapes just to build up the main form of the sunflower. So I know this is very rough. I know this is not perfect, but we're all just kind of getting used to it. And it's those practice swings, right? It's practicing the passing, it's practicing the kicking, it's practicing the shooting, so that when you jump into that game, you know how to do it and you're ready. So get a few of those down, and then we kind of start to feel a little bit good about it. So one of the things that people do sometimes when they're drawing, and it works better in some instances than others, but I try to dissuade people from doing this, is sometimes people get into drawing details too fast. So if I'm looking at my subject, I don't want to just start drawing really perfect petals. With details and shading right out the gate. Now, when I'm doing this without an overall layout, without an overall plan, I might draw a really amazing petal, but I don't get the sizes right and I don't get the position right, and maybe it doesn't quite match the middle. So if we keep it loose and then build up over it and build up and build up and build up, it's a lot easier. One of the things I talk about when I teach my figure drawing class is thinking about drawing like a building. And if you're going to go build a house, you wouldn't just start decorating. You wouldn't just start painting. You got to start by putting up a frame. You got to put up some walls. And then you can start decorating. Then you can start painting. So if we think about figure as putting up the frame of our house, think about the basic kind of shapes we put on top of it as putting up the walls of the house. Once we have all that, then we can get into the details and decorating of the thing. But we need a good foundation to begin with. So, we've got we feel good, we've loosened up, we've practiced our squiggly lines, our rough lines, our loose lines. We've all kind of tried drawing that sunflower shape a few times. Once we feel like we've kind of have a grasp on what the form is, what the figure is, and we feel warmed up by drawing a bit, then we can get into the actual thing of itself. Now, when you're drawing this sunflower, you could spend 3 minutes on it. You could spend 3 hours on it. Each drawing is going to be different. And some of us are probably very fast. Some of us are a little slow. Some of us like to make drawings kind of loose and messy. Some of us want them to be super clean and refined. For the purposes of this, I'm going to go a little bit faster. I tend to just draw a little bit quicker anyways. So bear with me. I don't expect everyone to have the exact same output, like I said. So if you want to draw this thing totally crazy, put your own spin on it, obviously feel free to do so. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to start with one flower, and then I think I'll build it out into a bit more of a bouquet. I can't quite see my setup here, but you know, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in a jar. I put some rocks in the jar too to just kind of hold them up nice and strong. And it's amazing. They've actually perked up a little bit since the sun came in. I have a big window behind us here. And it's kind of amazing how much they've perked up. So anyways, we're gonna start again with our basic stick figure, right? And that's me just doing the line for the long stem. Remember I was talking about that whole arm kind of conductor style drawing? You can see how I'm kind of swirling around and around. And what I'm doing there is I'm kind of finding the right shape and I'm building it up. And once I get a little bit further along, I'll find the actual line I like and I'll make it a little bolder and I'll make it pop a little bit more, but you kind of want to just let your hand flow around and find it. Again, we're staying loose and energetic so that our drawing will have that same thing in the end. So I think this is this right here. That's this shape here, right? The exterior of the head. I feel like I've got that. Now I'm going to start building up the petals. I did that very, very quick before, right? You remember I kind of had this thing going on. I'm not going to go quite that fast, but I still want it to be loose, right? So again, I'm going to try to look at my subject as much as I can and just slowly kind of build these up. Now, again, I know these shapes are not perfect because we're not after perfection the first time. A gesture drawing is loose and it's messy and it comes with a bit of a building up of things. There's a different type of drawing that's called contour drawing, and contour drawing is you're focused on drawing perfect outlines of things. That's not what we're doing today. Today it's about gesture drawings. Contour and gestures do go hand in hand as we learn a little bit more about art, because sometimes you want fine details and sometimes you want a looser picture. But today for observational drawings, focusing on gesture. So I don't want you to just draw outlines or silhouettes of your object. Don't be afraid to break into the interior, a bit of a mess. And we're starting loose and light, knowing that we're probably going to draw over top of things and build things up. Another thing I want to mention as we go, if anyone has any questions for us as we go, feel free to comment. And Victoria and I can chat about your questions and address them as we go. You know, I have all the things that I know about drawing and the things that I think about and the things that I remember. But I want to make sure that you have your questions answered should anything come up. So feel free to ask me anything you like as we go about. So I have this very, very simple basic shape, right? Circle in a circle, these kind of ovals with pointy ends on there and a long stem. One of the things when you're doing life drawing too is it's good to have a little bit of background. So I'm going to just plug in a little bit of my jar here. It grounds the object. It gives it a little more context. You don't want it to just be this flower flow space. So again, basic kind of idea here. As you're drawing too, you want to do a little bit of flexion. So, you know, take a pause, look at your subject, look at your drawing, look at your subject, and you go, okay, is there anything I can change? And I think my circle in the center is maybe just a touch too big. So I'm actually going to pull it in, and then I'm going to make petals just a little bit bigger. See, I've elongated these petals along the top, and I'm just a little bit happier with that shape. When you're an artist, you're kind of your own boss. You know, you got to check to see, is your work okay? Does it look the way it's supposed to be? What can I change? What can I do? You have to kind of challenge yourself to improve and do a little bit of self-reflection. So kind of did that tweak ever so slightly. And then I want to go in and just kind of start shaping up my petals a bit, right? I've got the general idea. If I talked about my building earlier, right? That stick figure was the frame. I've built up the shape with walls. Now I'm kind of getting into that painting in detail, which is the details and the shading. Details and shading are really going to kind of make things pop, make them stand out a little bit. So if I'm going to get into the petals, I want to look at the petals and think what makes them special, what makes them unique. So I don't know if you have sunflower photos or you want to take a look at mine there. But you can kind of see the shape of those. Again, they're kind of pointy oval-like shapes. We got some lines running through them, going out from the center, extending up. We also have these little, they kind of fold and pinch down at the end too, as they get towards the base and then blossom out. So think about those things as we're doing it. So I've studied my petals a bit. I'm gonna get into it. So now you can see as I'm drawing, I'm checking in quite a bit with my subject to make sure I'm on track, because I don't want it to become about just drawing from memory, right? I really want to rely on what's in front of me. And if you do a drawing, say you're in a park, if you really study something for 5 minutes, do a nice sketch of it, you could then take that home and turn it into a painting as long as you have that good foundation.
Hey,
so I
Jason.
started here. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but we do have a question from our audience for you. What are your favorite pieces to draw?
My favorite pieces, like things to draw in general?
Yeah, things to draw, stuff that you really are drawn towards when you like to make your art, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So in my intro, you mentioned I'm primarily an abstract painter, which is true. And, I think some of you might be like, well, what are you doing here? I've always drawn my whole life. When I was younger, I was very, very much into, comic books. Really wanted to be a comic book artist. That tool at return time. In undergrad, I got really into doing drawings of people. We had a lot of life drawing classes in school, and I got really into drawing people. As I got on a little bit older, my drawings of people became a little more stylized and became a little more abstract. And then now I'm just primarily an abstract painter. But I use drawing to plan out my paintings. And what my paintings have been inspired by lately, I've been doing a lot of paintings that are almost look like windows or like fences, kind of like intricate like lines and patterns. So yeah, I've been taking inspiration from windows and fences and gates, and then also like quilts. I really, really love quilt patterning. And I've been kind of playing with those things to make abstract paintings that are based on shapes and geometry. So a little bit different than this, but I think knowing how to draw stuff from real life is such an important foundation to no matter what you want to draw. And if you know how to kind of play by the rules, it's a lot easier to break them down the line, if that makes sense. That's a really good question. And I'm happy we touched on it too, because I don't want everyone here to think that they have to be the type of artist that does picture perfect things from real life. There's room for absolutely everything. And I certainly play around with everything. Thanks for your question.
Awesome. Thank you for that great explanation.
So you folks can see here, I talked about kind of doing those big, long lines. And as I've gone, my lines and my arm motions have gotten smaller. And that's because when we're doing these life drawings, we kind of start way zoomed out. And then we kind of zoom in. So think big picture, and then you start kind of narrowing your focus to the individual parts. But you need to have that strong outline before. And since I mentioned, being interested in kind of abstract stuff or things that are maybe a little more stylized, you might notice I'm kind of pulling these a little bit more than they are in real life. I think I'm kind of, they're a little longer, they're a little wispier, they're kind of a little curvier. And I think I'm just trying to give it a little bit of energy. So if that's your style and that's what you're into as well, please do so. So really trying to focus in on that shape and take some of that texture of those long kind of petal lines coming out. And you can see I'm doing the exterior of my petals a little bolder, and I'm trying to keep those fine lines in the center a little softer, a little wispier, a little lighter. Come in for a little bit of a look, right? You can definitely see the outside pretty well. And then you see those really soft kind of yellow on yellow lines in the petals there, those slight wrinkles and folds. So I want them to be a little bit looser. One of the things I should mention to all you folks is I am drawing with a colored pen. I love drawing with colored pencil in general, but one of the reasons I'm doing this is I'm trying to draw just a little bit more bold so that all you folks at home can see it nice and clear and bold. My hand sometimes gets a little bit heavy as well. We all draw a little bit differently. So please, please, please do not think for even 1 second that your drawing needs to look like mine to be any good. I think at the end, Victoria is going to talk to us too about ways that we can actually share drawings. And it would be really, really interesting to see all the different ways and styles that people come up with while essentially being focused on the same subject. When I was doing my search for this seminar, I was trying to find some sunflower seed, or not sunflower seeds, sorry, maybe I'm just hungry. I was trying to find some sunflowers in art history that we could talk about. And I did a little bit of looking, and I was a little disappointed, I gotta say. You know, I immediately thought of Van Gogh. A lot of folks probably know Vincent van Gogh. He painted a lot of sunflowers, really kind of beautiful. I was at the Vincent van Gogh Museum in February, actually, in Amsterdam. You know, beautiful paintings, really heavily textured, really loose, you know, what we call impressionist style. And you know, when I looked, the museum had some links to other people that had used sunflowers, and Gustav Klimt and a couple others, but it was, I just found this group kind of, you know, white European men, and I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted to see some other examples. I want to see from different parts of the world what they're like, from different backgrounds, what people interpret them. And, you know, I think Toronto is much more diverse than that, those samples that I found. So I'd love to see different perspectives on flowers and sunflowers from people from all different walks of life. I couldn't find any sunflower samples, but I'm not sure if any of you, some of you probably know Frida Kahlo, incredible female artist from Mexico and spent some time in America. But she has the most beautiful paintings. It's often self-portraits, but surrounded by these beautiful lush flowers and jungles. And they're really quite remarkable. And anytime that I draw flowers, I think of her work. I think when we are making art, it's really great to look at other artists, take inspiration. You know, is there something you want to do? Is there something you not want to do? Making art and displaying art, it's almost like participating in a conversation, and you can respond to other artists by making your own. So I've kind of focused on building this area up. I'm going to go back and do some more detail, but I'm feeling like I've neglected a little bit of the other stuff. So I'm going to work on my stem. I'm going to keep it pretty loose down at the bottom here. We will save our lesson on drawing glass and water for the advanced program a little bit. So when we have our stem, it's basically just these two straight lines coming down, right? but you can see a little bit of texture, and we're definitely getting a little bit of shading and shadows on there. So how do we make this just a little bit more interesting than just two sticks? And we do that by shading, right? So I'm gonna do some heavy kind of shading right underneath the flower, because that flower is gonna be, there's no light getting down there. The flower's covering it up. I'm just gonna carry some of that shading down and just kind of build it up. And you can just see that giving it a little bit of shading just gives it a little bit more form. All right, so I'm gonna get into the middle. Our middle part is absolutely the most detailed, right? Look at all those little things in there. I am not a scientist, so I do not know what they're called. I just know that it looks like a whole lot of stuff to draw. So am I gonna draw every one of those little itty bits? Absolutely not. At least not on this kind of thing. So I want to think about kind of what they look like, and they're just kind of little ticks, right? So we're just kind of building up these little ticks, and I'm doing a little bit of like a curve to them, right? Because they are kind of bending over and falling into one another. So I'm just kind of building them up with these little ticks, these little kind of curvy. And
Hey, Jason,
I'm gonna build the, yes.
I can actually speak to what those little ticks are that you're referring to. Those are the
I was
seeds.
hoping for that. I was hoping for that. Okay, great.
Yeah, those are the seeds of the sunflower.
Okay, and I'm sure you will agree that there's probably way too many of them for us to draw each and every single one.
Oh yes, lots.
I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but what, thousands upon thousands probably in there?
I mean, while you're continuing to draw, I could count them on my sunflowers here. But yeah, I'd say definitely today, close to 1,000.
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, the hairs on your head, right? If I'm drawing a person, I'm not drawing every single hair on your head. I'm drawing the kind of shape of it. I'm drawing the shadows in it, the movement of it. So when we look at our sunflower from a distance, the center is kind of one area, and then the outside is one of the other. So the outside to me is looking a little bit darker than the middle, and these are looking a little thicker and a little bigger than what's in the center. So I'm still gonna do the same kind of motion in the middle, but I'm building it up a little bit lighter and a little less dense, so that in the end, I'm gonna have two kind of sets of textures that are different. And because the center has a bit of shape to it, I'm kind of building it out in rings, so that in the end, my flower also has some shape. So again, everyone, this is a very quick sketch of the main idea of the sunflower. And you can see how loose I'm being with it, right? Like I'm just kind of drawing over those initial those initial lines to really kind of build my subject up. And the more I draw, the more kind of form and life it gets. And any little mistakes or outline, or, you know, kind of like initial lines, we're just kind of plowing over them to build it up. And the more we build it up, the more detail we get, the more dense it gets. And, you know, to be honest, I think the more interesting it gets. Oh. I never would have guessed that the biggest technical difficulty I would have today would be a paperclip.
Hey, Jason, question from the audience again.
Please.
Just wondering if you can give more guidance on drawing the seeds.
Yes, okay. What I'm doing, maybe I'll do a little bit of a thing off to the side here as well. Since it's just a practice drawing, I'm not too worried about kind of drawing in my margins here. So if there's any other details we want to work on, let me know and I'll kind of break them down off to the side. So one of the things, I'm just going to kind of take it way back. So I was just talking about breaking things down to their basic shapes and their kind of main ideas. And the better you get this life drawing, the better you're going to be at kind of examining things and breaking down the way they are. You know, like I can look at a person and kind of imagine how to draw the stick figure underneath, and, you know, okay, it's made up of ovals and a rectangular shape for the torso and a circle for the head. So I take that same approach to the sunflower. And when I look at the center, I don't know, the light on the Zoom is not the best, but obviously there's this clear circle here, and there's almost like a secondary circle in here. So I've broken it down into those two circles. So this is my outside circle, and this is my interior circle. In the sunflower, the circle in the center and the circle on the end have a different texture. The circle in the center, I can see more yellow coming through, and the lines don't look as heavy. That's actually a better angle. You can probably see the two circles there. So I can see more yellow in the center, and the lines aren't as heavy. And on the outside, it looks darker and the lines are thicker. The seeds, they almost grow up like little hairs, little blades of grass. So if I think about hair and grass kind of work, I'm just kind of thinking about these like tick marks like this. And again, this is about capturing the main idea, the basic idea. So I'm almost drawing these like, you know, little short hairs, or the way I might draw a beard or something, you know? So I'm building them up a little bit longer and a little bit darker on the outside to kind of give that impression. And then in the center, because it's less dense and they're a little bit thinner, I'm drawing them lighter and a little bit smaller. Now, the center also kind of, it rises up a little bit, like it has a little more shape and a little more contour. And because I really wanted to accentuate that, I was drawing it in kind of layers, like 1, 2, and kind of just building it around so that it's kind of blooming out of the center. Identifying the main shapes, circle inside of a circle, trying to identify what makes them different, denser, darker, lighter, looser, and then bringing that into my lines. And again, so not drawing every single one, but drawing the basic shape and the basic idea of them. I'm not sure who asked that question, but I hope it answered your question somewhat. Also, you know, this does come with practice, whether it's drawing other things and then applying it to a new subject. And, you know, I've also been practicing drawing sunflowers the past few days, and many of you folks might be doing it for the first time. So like I said, each and every time you do it, it's going to get a little bit better. But hopefully that gives enough of a starting point for you.
Awesome.
Are there any other questions?
So that question came from Ramin. So thank you so much for that. Just wondering, Jason, if you're able to show the drawing a little bit closer to the camera so we can see that finer detail of the seeds. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Also, just want to remind everyone that there's about 10 minutes left of this workshop.
So you can see, you can even see my lines underneath, right? I started with a circle on the outside, a circle on the inside, and I've identified those two areas. And I've accentuated it a little bit, but you know, you can see some of these, there's a couple different lines happening. So really dense and dark on the outside and lighter and looser on the center. But just to give it just, you know, a little bit more shape and a little bit more character. I was trying to draw one that was a little bit easier and a little more straightforward, and I didn't include the leaves. But I think I could sneak a leaf in the back of here. So why don't I just kind of do one of those for everyone? So I start with a line which will be down the center of my leaf, and that just kind of helps me outline it the same way I would do a stick figure. And then I'm going to build it up again with that shape. It's very similar in its most basic to the petal forms, although it'll be different. And we will accentuate those differences as we go on. So it blooms a little more in the bottom. I think I saw someone say that they drew a face on their sunflower, and I could definitely see that, and I could definitely see the arm or the leaves being arms. So one of the things about the sunflower leaves unlike that, make them different than the petals, is we have that really kind of jagged edge. It's very, very distinct. So I'm just going to kind of drop in some of those little spiky bits on the end. When shading, one of the things to remember is everything that's lighter is going to come forward and everything that's darker is going to recede. So I've done some petals in the background that are cut out, and the ones in the front the lightest. So this is in the background. So I'm going to just shade it a bit so that it kind of falls behind our flower. I'm just doing some of those lines that are in the leaf as well. And those lines almost stretch down like roots from a tree or veins, but you can just imagine the science of this, how all of these living things are connected and have similar structures. And again, I may be exaggerating those lines a little bit, but I'm, trying to give it a little more action, a little more life, a little more energy. So this leaf is way in the background, so I'm just going to mostly shade it way out. But you can just kind of see there that the way that we shade things, our lighter objects are going to be in the foreground. Things that are kind of in the middle are somewhat shaded, and things that are all the way to the back are going to be our darkest. And that helps give us a little bit of depth. And as you go, don't be afraid to return to parts either, right? I keep kind of going and go, oh, you know what, that petal could use a little bit more. This could actually be a little bit darker. As drawing, you're kind of around and working on everything all at once and kind of building the whole thing up instead of just like 1, 2, step by step. You want to kind of do overall as you go. Does anyone have any other questions about the sunflower or a specific part you want to know a little bit more about? Anything that I can kind of re-explain a little bit? I know sometimes I go fast, but I want to make sure if there's anything that you need, by all means ask me. Don't be shy, please.
Yeah, we have a question from Charlie
Sure.
in reference to the art piece. How do you do the glass that the flower is sitting in?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I said this was sort of the advanced program, and I wasn't going to get a ton into it. But so drawing glass, drawing reflective things is always, it's a challenge. Like when you go to art school, sometimes they will, they'll have you draw, glasses with water in them or empty bottles or things like that. So when we're drawing in general, we want to have a full spectrum of the darkest darks and the lightest lights. And what really happens in drawing glassware is you're going to have that full range because you're making something that's reflective. So you want to have, highlights as well as kind of shadow parts. I'm going to draw really, really kind of quickly on this. So, you kind of do these, if this is my outside, you kind of have these lines and shadows and shading that follow the shape of it. Because this glass jar, it kind of comes down and then balloons out and goes back down again. And the glass doesn't have any hard lines on it that show you that. So you have to kind of make up for that in the shiny parts. Sometimes when we're doing shines, we draw kind of circles, right? That shows where the light's hitting it.